Thank you, everyone. Secretary Radu, will you please call the roll?
Regent Bartel. Regent Bradley. Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Crane.
Here.
Regent Danae Davis.
Here.
Regent Stan Davis.
Here.
Regent Drew. Regent Evers.
Here.
Regent Falbo.
Here.
Regent Loftus. Regent Menydeep.
Here.
Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Schwallenberg.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Spector.
Here.
Regent Vasquez.
Here.
Regent Walsh. Regent Wingate.
Here.
Regent Womack. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The minutes of the August 19th and 20th, 2010 meetings have been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they stand approved. The written report of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board has been provided. Are there any questions or comments? Regents on that board are Regent Stan Davis, Regent Evers, Smith, and Vasquez. I just wanted to say a couple things here on my report. First of all, I wanted to announce that Regent Mark Bradley is in the news again. Mark is featured on the cover of the September 28th edition of Marketplace magazine. As you may recall, Mark was recently named as just the 4th president of the Reuter Ware law firm, now in its 90th year of operation in Wausau. In a 5-page color spread inside the magazine, copies of which you will find in your packets, although not in color, so it doesn't quite do it justice. Mark talks about the firm, its history, and its future, and the importance of dealing with clients as people. Mark also shares his perspective as a second-term regent, including thoughts about the UW system's vital role in the state's economy. It's a nice piece. I encourage you all to take a look. Mark will also be happy to share the name and contact information of his publicist, who seems to be doing a hell of a job these days getting stories about Mark in the media. So congratulations, Mark. It's a nice job. Other regents making news on Wednesday night, Regent David Walsh was honored at the governor's residence for his work with the UW-I Research Institute in Madison. David is stepping down as the Institute's chairman of the board after a 3-year term, and in recognition of his service, the David G. Walsh Retinal Research Fellowship is being created to support further research on retinal issues. David is not here. He was going to be on the phone, but we should all congratulate him on that accomplishment. On a more somber note, on behalf of the board, I'd like to express our condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of Barbara Thompson, who recently passed away in Florida at the age of 85. Barbara was the first woman to serve as Wisconsin State Superintendent of Public Instruction, serving 2 terms from 1973 to 1981. As such, she was also a member of this board. I know Regent Tony Evers knew her well as both a friend and a boss, and maybe Tony would like to say a few words. Scott?
Yeah, it was an honor to work with Barbara. She was first elected superintendent, as the president indicated, and I had the kind of an odd circumstance. I actually worked for Barbara early on in my career, shortly after she was elected. I actually had 2 terms at the Department of Public Instruction. One when I was much younger, and presently, but. Dr. Thompson was just an outstanding educator. She served 2 terms with dignity, and she was always a source of inspiration for me personally. One of her major accomplishments, she had many accomplishments. One of them that I felt most strongly about was her when she decided that teacher licensing was not a lifelong right, and by taking away and removing lifelong licensing, she essentially sent the message that the professionals that worked in the K-12 system, PK-12 system, had to continually improve, had to continually engage in professional development and advanced learning in institutions of higher ed in order to be current. And I just thought that it was quite a strong statement at that point in time, many decades ago. The other thing Regents should know that both Barbara and her husband Glenn spent their entire lives in public education. And their son, Jim Thompson, established the Barbara and Glenn Thompson Graduate Award Fund at UW-Madison in the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis, and that provides a scholarship for one PhD candidate each year. So we remember her well, and she had a great career. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Looking ahead to our November board meeting in Madison, it will be a one-day deep dive session when we'll have the opportunity to look at 2 topics in depth without any pressure to take immediate action on them. One topic we'll address is the much discussed but I think widely misunderstood phenomenon known as brain gain and brain drain. In the last couple months, we've been reading a lot about some rather pessimistic forecasts regarding the brain drain. One study funded by the Wisconsin Policy Research Institute and conducted by Ken Goldstein of UW-Madison found that 62% of those surveyed believe that the best and brightest are leaving Wisconsin to work elsewhere. This study, and I know many of you have both seen it and probably been asked about it, has provoked a lot of conversation. As President Riley and I have traveled the state arguing for the importance of more graduates and the growth agenda and the principles for progress and prosperity, one of the most frequently asked questions that editorial boards and others will ask is, why should we do this? If these facts are true, why should we invest more in the public university if most of those new graduates are just going to leave the state and go somewhere else? That's a fair question, and one that policymakers, opinion leaders, and citizens deserve a complete and correct answer to. One of my academic mentors, the late Professor Daniel Patrick Moynihan, used to say, you are entitled to your opinions, you are not entitled to your facts. And next month we'll hear a lot more about facts regarding the brain drain and in Wisconsin, and the board will have a chance, as well as our other colleagues, to use those facts to express your own opinions and ideas. And I think it'll be an interesting conversation. Also in November, we'll look more closely, as we talked about yesterday, at the PK through 16 pipeline and how we work or sometimes don't work together. The we there includes our public schools, UW institutions, and other educational partners. I know system staff has already been talking with Regent Evers and his staff and others in the K-12 system to ensure that we have a productive and provocative discussion on this critical issue for the future of higher education in Wisconsin. Also for the November meeting, you might be interested to know that we have already extended an invitation to both candidates for governor and asked and invited the winner to come and address this board. We can invite the loser, but it would probably be kind of depressing for them. Our next meeting happens to fall almost immediately after Election Day, so if this invitation is accepted, we may have an early opportunity to meet Wisconsin's next governor. Finally, I wanted to take note that in the closing days of the congressional session last month, supporters in the United States Senate fell short in their efforts to pass the DREAM Act. Just to remind us all, the DREAM Act would provide currently illegal immigrant students who graduate from U.S. high schools, enter the country before the age of 16, and have been in the U.S. for 5 years or more, the opportunity to earn conditional permanent residency if they complete 2 years of military service with an honorable discharge or complete at least 2 years of college in pursuit of a bachelor or graduate degree. I want to say that I am awfully proud that, led by Regent Vasquez, so many on this board, including President Riley, signed a letter in June to Congress in support of the DREAM Act. We now know that this effort will take a little while longer, but as Dr. King reminded us, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. I hope that those young people in Wisconsin who await the passage of the DREAM Act and the opportunities it will provide them to pursue a college education and serve a country they love will keep the faith and realize that the arc is indeed bending their way and will arrive someday, hopefully someday very soon. That concludes my report. President Riley.
Thank you, President Pruitt. Good morning, everybody. As we've already heard, here at the UW-Oshkosh, this institution is engaged in a lot of important educational partnerships and regional collaborations. These efforts, these joint efforts, support the institution's educational mission, and in the finest tradition of the Wisconsin idea, they help connect the people in the region with valuable university resources and expertise, and the people in the region through them have an opportunity to influence the university's programming and direction. This morning's presentation will highlight two regional collaborations, the New North and New Era. New North is a consortium of leaders representing business, economic development corporations, chambers of commerce, civic groups, nonprofit organizations, and educational institutions from 18 counties in northeastern Wisconsin. Chancellor Wells and other colleagues are part of that effort, working to promote job growth, economic viability, and a high quality of life. At a regional economic forum back in 2000, people identified collaboration as a top priority among educational institutions within this region, calling on colleges and universities to, quote, reduce barriers that limit access, unquote. Thus was the genesis of the Northeast Wisconsin Educational Resource Alliance, New Era. So to update our board on both of these regional efforts, I'm going to turn it over to Chancellor Wells, and he has some special guests to help him do that as well. Rick.
Thank you, President Riley, and good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to introduce the chair of the Northeast Wisconsin Educational Resource Alliance, Dr. Susan May, president of Fox Valley Technical College. President May will start the New North, Inc. and New Era update and panel presentation. Information on New North, Inc. and New Era, as well as the other panelists who you'll meet shortly, is included in your packets. Susan.
Thank you, Chancellor Wells. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to provide a brief report on the New Era organization here in this region. I'm going to refer this morning to a one-page handout that you should have before you. It's a bit of a green and, a blue and gold document. As Chancellor Wells indicated, we're talking about the Northeast Wisconsin Educational Resource Alliance, which is a collaborative effort on the part of 13 publicly funded institutions of higher education here in Northeast Wisconsin. And you can see on the left side of that document the list of specific institutions that are engaged together in these efforts. This organization has existed since, for now, almost a decade, and we've had a whole series of interesting discussions, challenges, initiatives, and opportunities that we've taken on collectively over this decade. I would like to focus primarily on the backside of this document and share with you some of the accomplishments that we've been able to accomplish as an educational collaborative here in Northeast Wisconsin. Again, down the bottom side of that document on the left-hand side, I'd like to just run through these very, very briefly. One of the key things that we've focused on here in Northeast Wisconsin is coordinating our educational program offerings and building them together in many instances so that they work effectively and seamlessly for residents of Northeast Wisconsin. We've also very much worked together to try to respond to and address the significant increase in demand for educational services that we've been experiencing here in this region over the last several years. One of the hallmarks from my perspective has been the development of the Bachelor of Applied Studies degree option. It's a degree completion option that exists in this region that is available through UW-Oshkosh and UW-Green Bay, that is available for technical college graduates of this region, and has been a very, very interesting development, we feel, in the state of Wisconsin, giving opportunities to work toward that seamless education that so many of our residents and so many of our businesses are calling for in the public education sector. We also have done an extensive amount of work in this region thus far in working to bring technology and engineering technology programming to this region through efforts in collaboration with both UW-Platteville, UW-Stout, and we are also now beginning to work on additional opportunities that might become available to meet the demand that we are seeing in this region, and I'll mention that in just 1 minute. Another highlight over the decade, I believe, that has occurred as a result of the New Era organization has been to create what we've called a faculty dialogue group. We actually have faculty from all these institutions on a monthly basis getting together as representatives of their organizations and having dialogue and beginning to understand the various missions and differences and similarities that exist between these higher education institutions in our region. And I think that has spawned many, many benefits when faculty can work together and understand from their perspectives what our organization is about and what we are trying to accomplish collectively for the people of our region. A very early win for the New Era organization was the creation of a regional library card that allows really complete access by residents to any of our institutions, libraries, and resources across the region. So that was a very tangible early development of the organization. And finally, I would highlight that annually we do a legislative breakfast with the representatives from this region to try to focus on issues of higher education and, most importantly, of higher education collaboration and what we've accomplished, what we're working on, and how we need their support, help, and understanding to advance New Era's mission overall. Before I close this portion of the overview, I'd like to just point out some of the current initiatives that are also highlighted in this document. We're working on addressing both programming and institutional practices right now that deal with the sustainability topic as well as engineering and engineering technology in the New North region. We've also, I think as you are all well aware, have submitted the Regional Economic Assistance Center proposal, or we're calling it New Era REACH, in our effort to further our collaborative efforts here in this region. And finally, we are working to solidify the organizational status of New Era as a 501c3 at this point in time, and looking to pool our resources to bring on board, for the first time, an executive director for New Era. What we're finding are so many initiatives and so much work that is being done between our work groups and our general organization that we absolutely need some support, some leadership, and some direction to be able to continue to take this organization to the next level. I have with me this morning other representatives of New Era. I have Jim Perry here from UW-Fox Valley and Tom Harden from UW-Green Bay. And I would like to open it up if they have additional comments about their experiences with the New Era organization as well. Jim or Tom?
Thanks, Susan. I was in the most recent past president of New Era, and I'll just add from my own perspective the advantages and some of the things that I see that we have been able to accomplish, and they're less maybe tangible than the things that Susan has mentioned. But I will say that among us there is an opportunity, a rare opportunity for frank and candid discussion, and I do mean frank and candid. We get together as a group of campus executives on about a quarterly basis, and the discussion is free-ranging and it's honest. It's something that oftentimes is sometimes below the surface, but we feel comfortable with one another as individuals, as friends, and as colleagues to express some of the real concerns that we have. It's obvious that we are collaborators, but it's also obvious that to a certain extent we're competitors, and what we're trying to do is trying to figure out ways to reduce the competition and increase the collaboration. For those of you who know Senator Mike Ellis, you know that he is a person that speaks his mind and is very blunt in his opinions about things. One of the things that I take away from my experience was Senator Ellis's comments about the sort of unique thing that is going on with New Era, that we actually are getting together as a group of potential competitors and figuring out ways to do things differently. And Senator Ellis said at one of our legislative breakfasts that we could be a model for the state of Wisconsin and perhaps for the region. Coming from Mike, I think that that's something to pay attention to. We're trying to develop also an expertise database. Unlike the UW-Madison and the City of Madison, where there is an awful lot of talent in a rather restricted geographic region, our talent is spread out from Green Bay to Fond du Lac to Sheboygan to the lakeshore, and including the Fox Valley. So one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to bring together essentially a resource list for people that are in need of that. Business and industry that are looking for people who have a particular expertise, perhaps in engineering, perhaps in the social sciences, you name it, but something where they can actually turn to us and say, we have a need here, we believe that as a consortium you can address that need. And finally, the thing that's on the horizon for, I believe, about a month from now, is kind of a collaboration to recruit the new market of adult learners. We have all of our institutions working on trying to get into the educational pipeline those people who have traditionally had a difficult time entering it because of work or life experiences. So we'll be having adult recruiting fairs, if you will, that's sponsored by New Era as a collaboration in each one of our sites I believe in the month of November. Something to look forward to as we look to the growth agenda and trying to increase the number of baccalaureate and associate degree holders in our region and throughout the state of Wisconsin. I think this is the thing that can actually work to our benefit. So that's my perspective as the recent past president, and the incoming president, I think, may have something to say as was on the horizon for him.
We've not had an election of that, by the way,
We haven't?
but I would be honored to be the president of this group. How's that? New Era does a number of really good things, and they've talked about quite a few of them. To me, the most important thing that we accomplish is open dialogue, and Jim just talked a bit about that. But it also goes into the faculty dialogue groups. We have faculty from each of the institutions who get together regularly, and I think that has solved a lot of our articulation problems or problems that we may have seen in the past where a student at one institution has a hard time getting started in another one. The competition types of attitudes that we can hold on to until we get together with our colleagues and find out we're actually friends and we're really trying to do many of the same kinds of things. So the faculty dialogue, I think, has been just tremendous. And the free dialogue, the open dialogue that Jim also talked about, I think has been maybe the second most important thing that I've seen in my 15 months of association with New Era. And it is a lot easier to do business with people that you know well and you respect and you like as people. And so from the various institutions with somewhat differing missions, but with the same goal of educating people in the Northeast Wisconsin region, we've really been able to air some problems and solve some issues that probably would still be hanging out there had we not gotten together regularly.
Thanks, gentlemen. Chancellor Wells? Off over to the New North. Jerry?
I'll do a little bit of an introduction, but first I want to welcome the Regents and President Riley to the New North. This is a great opportunity for us to actually race you through a ton of information. I've tried to supplement some of what you'll see real quickly with some handouts, and I'll try to reference those as we go through. To my right is Tim Weinberg. Tim is a charter member of the New North. He was slogging in the ditch when they were first trying to form the rough rudimentary skeleton of the organization. So he has a legacy perspective of a charter member of the organization. Tim will join me on discussing some of the backdrop for the organization. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to race through this, and part of the race is really an attempt to try to throw a little bit of the kitchen sink at you with the hope that, two, I don't overwhelm you, and also that I kind of leave you with some impressions about some of the great work that's going on. And before I do that, let me make a transition. The New North has at the end of the day, all of the work that we do is basically designed around a marketing outcome. There are other outcomes, but a marketing outcome. And if I reduced all of our work really to a branding conclusion and what basically defines the brand of New North, education is so deeply woven into all of our initiatives. That I can tell you, I've done this in a couple of different states. The New Era organization accelerates all of that opportunity around building education as one of the underpinnings of virtually all of our strategies. So I am very, very advantaged over my peers in the state and my peers outside the state in terms of the benefits that we accrue as a consequence of New Era. Tim's going to cover some of the basics real quickly. Tim, if you want to cover some of these.
Sure. A quick introductory comment, however. I come to you today as a businessman. I'm not an educator, and most of us who are businessmen in this community and in this state view the UW system as a supplier to us. We are a customer of the system. We employ 350 scientists and engineers in the state: Milwaukee, Green Bay, La Crosse, Madison, and I'm here because we care about our supplier, okay, very much. And I'm also a Badger graduate, 1971. New Era, recognized as a nationally and globally being nationally and globally competitive for job growth is our vision, while maintaining our superior quality of life. Our mission is really harnessing all of the region's resources, including New Era. We're an inclusive organization. Anybody who cares to be part of us can be part of us, and we're driving collaboration and a spirit of collaboration among all those interests that have that vision and mission in mind. The region, it's about northeastern Wisconsin. We had to have a geography when we started. We argued about that for 2 years, finally came up with 18 counties, and but the line is a pretty, not a very hard one. 1.2 million people in this part of the state, 400 municipalities. Our manufacturing is world-renowned. It's got a great history. We've handled fiber, read paper when you see that, and we have more cattle, more cows in northeastern Wisconsin than the rest of the state. And our numbers are growing, and the rest of the state's actually going down. So we're a magnet for, excuse me, but we're a magnet for manure. And we like it. Healthcare industry, nationally recognized, and then the finance, the insurance, and the real estate industry as well as a cornerstone of our region. Our organization, I think Jerry will take you through this and give you an overview of not only the organization, but what our core strategies are to accomplish our vision.
Just a skeleton of the organization. Internal resources, you're looking at 50% of the manpower for the New North organization.
Right there.
Thank you. So it's very, very small. 2 staff people. We have 3 interns. We actually have 1 intern, and I thought Ann might even be here, but we have 1 intern from UW-Oshkosh that is absolutely a crackerjack. Our internships, we pull from virtually all of the New Era institutions. We have 1 from UW-Oshkosh, 1 from UWGB, and 1 from St. Norbert's. Those folks come to us with really impressive capacities. I got to tell you, you're producing a fantastic product, to Tim's point. The other piece that we have is purchase services. We actually engage a couple of professional folks, creative folks, a PR firm, and an investor relations firm part-time. But the big piece for New North is our collaborations. We count roughly 300 collaborations, active collaborations, about 250 people wrapped around the work of those collaborations, and you'll see that work in a second. This is a really important part of why we get things done. And this is difficult because it's all about, at the end of the day, it's all about people and people's willingness to roll up their sleeves and get at the work of creating enough push behind the economy to sustain it and grow it. We have 6 strategies. They're basically 2 under each of these buckets, a talent bucket, a business development bucket, and a branding bucket. I'll talk about each of those. As I do that, this gray piece, actually the center binding, is actually the listing of the 6 strategic initiatives under those headings. But first, I'm going to run through this very quickly. The Attract, Retain, Diversify, and Develop Task Group is really intended to try to build a reputation around our ability to attract and develop and grow good talent. The piece that you have in front of you, that is this blue piece, the Living in New North, this was actually a collateral piece that was developed by this task group to try to anticipate a regional offer for people who are evaluating the New North as a place to live. You'll notice that we have one of the headings is education, and it's a significant heading. I think of all the people who make location decisions about where they are actually going to work, will spend a significant amount of energy right on this education and the educational element as part of their decision tree. You'll also notice that we highlight New Era on that page because we're very proud of that organization. The work of the organization also goes to shifting in terms of what the economy is pushing at us. In October of 2008, we were still looking for people. We were still looking for trying to fill in technical trades around demand functions of the business community. Obviously, with the recession, that shift was dramatic. We went to, instead of having a regional job fair, we went to having a regional career fair. In order to attract and develop people along new opportunities, we actually did a great deal of research around where the demand functions are in the future. So if there are significant unemployment numbers and those people are investing in time, energy, and money to re-educate or redeploy their skills by enrolling in some of the educational institutions in New North, we wanted to give them an idea, a strong foundation of where the career opportunities would be going forward. So this work of this task group shifted dramatically right along with the economy. Educational attainment is one I want to spend a little bit of time on. There's really a couple of pieces to this. One of the motivators around the educational attainment task group was a below par value of BA degrees in the workforce. So there was a very specific orientation around generating additional BAs, but I want to back off that a minute. We also then looked at the whole pipeline of education, and that begins with cradle to even before pre-K. A great deal of effort has recently gone into the development of this growth chart. You can take a look at this later, but basically it's designed around development targets or benchmarks for parents to use, not just to measure the height of their child as they progress, but also the developmental capacity of the child as they progress. This is an important feedstock for everything that ultimately ends up, hopefully, at that workforce development or that BA level. I think that the work of this group is particularly focused also around the assumption or the belief that virtually everybody going into our workforce has to invest at least in post-secondary education. So the assumption wasn't that all people will go to a BA level, but I think the assumption is that all people have to go through at least that associate degree level. And the BAs, frankly, we need to keep working at building a stronger and stronger capacity around the workforce and BAs. All of this work, frankly, the distinction of all of this work is that it's all anchored by what the business community, the demand functions in New North are calling for. So it isn't education for the sake of education, just that. It isn't degrees for the sake of degrees. It's all of that designed around ultimately producing a product that is absolutely in a demand stream for the regional economy. So it's connected back to that. Entrepreneurship is the next one. We have developed a significant amount of time around networking. So all of those references are to opportunities for entrepreneurs and small business owners to actually get together either virtually or literally around events or around conversations that are ongoing. So all of that capacity was built out. The new plateau for entrepreneurship basically is going to be anchored on this, and I want to spend a second on this because UW-Oshkosh Small Business Development Center staff and some students from UW-Oshkosh actually developed a New North Entrepreneurial Index based on the Ewing Kaufman Foundation's Entrepreneurial Index that you may be familiar with. What they did is they took Kaufman's index, which is well regarded, well respected, and basically dissected it relative to the elements that could be found at a unit of government level. So it couldn't stream all of the elements, but it could stream many of them. And basically what that does is that gives this entrepreneurship and small business task group absolute focus and targets around what their objectives are. So their work program is different. It's not just building a channel or a capacity to talk to one another. Now it's driven by activities that will produce greater intellectual property commercialized, more SBA loans, more business starts, less business failures, that kind of thing. So the work program changes dramatically. What I think we have in play here is the ability to generate or capture or screen a significant amount of entrepreneurial activity. But we have to be able to surround that capacity with success quotients. And these metrics are going to be driving the work programs for that. At this point, I'd also make a commercial for the REACH program. One of the things that's critical around this idea of enabling or surrounding entrepreneurs with success quotient capacity is the ability to tap into the university university system, the New Era membership systems. So right now, frankly, the only way that there's a connection that happens between a business resource, demand function, or need and the university is serendipity. There has to be a personal connection, and that's how that happens. REACH is designed to basically put some structure around that. Inventory the faculty capacities that are in New North, inventory the facilities or lab or machinery and devices that are available on university campuses or on the technical college campuses, and basically begin to market those to the business community. Right now, that's really, that you would almost have to commit a lifetime to figuring out how to get through that door. So REACH is an important element to fulfilling some of what the objectives are, even around our entrepreneurship task group. This is something that probably gets the most play, at least in terms of New North. As many of you may have seen, we have a supply chain market developed around the wind energy industry, basically repositioning manufacturers in northeastern Wisconsin and now the balance of the state to chase after the growth capacity of component supply to the wind energy industry. We're doing basically the same thing around biofuels and cellulosic ethanol. Others are championing a marine sector, principally around the educational development needs that will be consumed by that. For those of you who don't know, we have, I think, 4 yacht manufacturers in New North and a significant shipbuilder in Fincantieri. So that is a unique industry sector that we hope to be able to build strength around. Converting influence is all the paper converting that happens after it rolls off of a paper machine, and that industry is a significant player in New North. On the horizon is dairy innovation. Tim referred to one of the constrictors of the dairy innovation, and that is the management of manure. The constrictor for us in terms of dairy production is the manure. That's what ends up being the constrictor. But let me take you a little bit further than that. If you solve that problem, we produce more milk. If we produce more milk, we make more cheese. If we make more cheese, we have more packaging. If we have more packaging, we make more paper. So in New North, figuring out manure is a big deal. And then tourism, of course, is another part of our economy that is a significant player. Repurposing is something that nobody wants to do. The NewPage paper company closed the Niagara Mill some time ago, and our work basically went around this algorithm or this approach to the problem. When the mill closed, the first action was to take care of people. Is run to the need of the people who were most directly impacted by the closing of the mill. The second is, to the extent that we could, we needed to market or reposition the assets in the mill, and that was ongoing. And then the last piece, and this is hard, the last piece is life after paper. And so if any of you are familiar with the city of Niagara, or any community, frankly, in the state, that has one significant economic horse in the barn, if the horse gets sick, this is a tough conversation. And it requires, again, a great deal of creative thinking, logical thinking, to carry the capacity beyond what was yesterday, no longer will be. Kimberly is the other NewPage mill, and basically we're trying to do a different or a similar version of that. We have a sustainability initiative, and this plays back again to the New Era orientation around their dimension of curriculum building and curriculum coordination around sustainability. Those are the capacities and the focus of our business case for sustainability. It's basically an extension of Lean. Businesses could be motivated to incorporate sustainability practices into their operation because it makes good business sense. So there are lots of reasons why people are chasing after sustainability. This is the track that we're trying to highlight as a brand value. The last, branding. It's basically taking the success of New Era, it's taking the success of the universities, it's basically taking and celebrating the success around all of the prior 5 strategic initiatives. It's making an incredible amount of noise and then ultimately filtering the noise down to investment opportunities, risk takers, the ability to translate all of what we're trying to promote as a brand value into job generation, and not just jobs, but great jobs. Now, we're marketing people, so you're going to get 2 commercials. One is we have the supply chain event in October. You can incorporate this into your conversation for the next 2 days. I'd appreciate that very much. But this is basically what we're doing. We're trying to educate the state, manufacturing community principally, around the market opportunities that come with wind. This is not wind generation. This is supply to the wind energy industry. The state of Wisconsin is well positioned logistically. It's well positioned in terms of its manufacturing prowess to participate in this in a really effective way. But first we have to educate manufacturers that they're capable. And then secondly, we have to, the New North approach to this is we have to afford those folks opportunities to get themselves into the marketplace. And then of course you are all invited to our annual summit. This year it's being hosted by UW-Oshkosh. We'll be in the Colf Center, which will be interesting. We're not playing basketball. We'll be trying to incorporate a big, long conversation about what happened this last year and what we look forward to coming into the next year. That concludes my comments. Any further additions from the panel? As I said, I'm going to do this fast. I intended to run right past you with as much as I could. And hopefully this will leave you with the impression that a great deal is going on in New North. But the only reason that a great deal is going on is because we've managed the magic of this collaboration model. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Question? Regent Craig.
I think at this time that I am the only person on the Board of Regents who lives in the New North. I am a resident of Green Bay and very much appreciate everything that New Era and New North is about in our region. I've been involved in a number of activities that have been related to both of those entities, and its presence is known in many of the things that I've been involved in. I am a holder of the library card and have used it, and a lot of my involvement in Green Bay has not only been in education, but in human services. And I say with some pride that I was part of the beginnings of the Community Partnership for Children that has produced this, the chart that's here today. So in many ways it's made an enormous difference and is making an enormous difference. And one more personal comment. My husband for many years was involved in the paper industry, and specifically the paper converting machine industry, and those questions that you're raising are very important. So I'm glad to be part of that.
Thank you.
Tony? Oh, Regent Evers.
As a region, I really appreciate your collaborative effort, especially where, but I mean, as Steve Superintendent, I'm a pipeline guy, and that you talked about, and from the K-12 situation. And I just want to let you know what we're doing to kind of help improve that pipeline. We've adopted internationally benchmarked Common Core standards for our K-12 system. We are likely to, if we're successful, increase our graduation requirements in the near future in the next legislative session. We hope to provide opportunities for highly able students to test out of high school after their 10th grade so that they're not marking time in high school. So I think we're trying to improve the pipeline. And I guess my ask here is this, and I know you're not sending this message, just send us more able and more competent students. My ask is that, especially I think this may be more for New Era, but that we do everything we can to not only collaborate among higher ed partners, but if we can make sure that we have opportunities for our students to transcript and credit, articulation agreements, early college, high school, middle colleges, all those opportunities for our students at the PK system to access higher education, more rigorous coursework will help that pipeline also. And so I just encourage that collaboration going. I know it's important to collaborate at your level, but whatever you can do to move that collaboration down into the high school level, for whether it's gifted kids or whether it's at-risk kids, access to rigorous curriculum, and also, especially for at-risk kids, having the knowledge that there's something beyond what's happening in their life this minute, where they can see a future. I think it's just critically important. So you got a great start here. Whatever you can do to drive that forward would be appreciated.
Regent Debs.
Speaking of collaboration, can any of you elaborate on some of the examples of the impact or inclusion, or I'm not exactly sure what I want to ask, around the College of Menominee Nation? I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you infuse, especially around the education piece, the collaborative efforts with the College of Menominee Nation.
Well, I can say that the College of Menominee Nation is a full partner in the New Era organization, and I know that we have worked together among various institutions to see what kind of programming we can work together on. One example that I can speak to right off the top of my head is that Fox Valley Technical College, as an example, has an articulation agreement with CMN in the criminal justice area, the law enforcement area. So students will begin at the College of Menominee Nation and come and finish an associate degree with us at the Appleton campus, as an example. Just one example of the kinds of programmatic collaboration that goes on. But certainly, again, from my view, that institution has been very active in all facets of New Era, including things like the Faculty Dialogue Group. CMN, for example, was the host college site for the faculty conference this past spring, so engaging in a number of ways. It's an institution that is funded a little differently than several of us, but they certainly still are publicly supported in many ways, and it's one of our more unique institutions engaged in the New Era organization. I think Chancellor Wells might want to comment as well.
I would quickly add, we've had collaborations too in the area of sustainability. Part of all this work we're doing is sustainability. Of course, the College of Menominee was way ahead of everybody in that kind of thing. So they're very much involved with that. In our College of Nursing, with the College of Menominee, garnered a pretty large federal grant to help with nursing education, articulation. And I think it's fair to say that we haven't begun to tap the ways that we could use the uniqueness of that outstanding institution to move forward other initiatives. But they're fully involved partners, and so we have a lot going on with them.
I might add that the whole nature of collaboration enhances the opportunities for individual institutions like Green Bay and Oshkosh and others to work directly with Vera and Verna, and other people at the College of Menominee Nation. I know Oshkosh has a relationship with one of the people of that college. We do too. We have a good enough relationship that when there's an individual student, and at the College of Menominee Nation, they're small enough, they work very much with individual students in preparing them to transfer to other institutions. They do so very effectively with us, and we really collaborate very nicely, I think, on an individual basis, which I think is something that New Era has allowed us to enhance.
I have one comment about the College of Menominee as well. Actually, two. One, President Fowler is very fond to remind us that the College of Menominee Nation is the other land-grant institution within the state of Wisconsin, which obviously they are. But the second thing is for those of us who've been around for a while, we know that when we talk about sustainability, it's a relatively recent, but sustainability has been part of the College of Menominee Nation in Menominee County for forever. And the Faculty Dialogue Group, their effort with regard to sustainability really started with the College of Menominee and the expertise of the faculty there. So in essence, the College of Menominee faculty have led the way for that initiative. So we turn to them to help us learn how to do the things that we should have been doing all along.
We'll quickly add in Regent Evers, too, that through New North, there is a lot more opportunities for the Education Committee. PK through 12 early childhood reps are all on those committees and initiatives working there. But I agree that's an area that we could do a lot better in than we, I think, currently are at this point in time. So that's good advice, and I wanted to thank you for that.
I'd just say that I think this part of the state is really leading the way for the rest of the state in the way you've paired the strength of your educational alliance with the strength of New North. And I think that those strengths feed off each other and make it much more than the sum of the two parts. And I don't know that any other region in the state has gotten quite that far in those connections. We have farther to go, Jerry, as you were indicating too, in terms of how the outside world accesses our higher ed institutions, but I think you're showing us a lot of how that can be done well now and will be done more in the future. So thank you for all your work, and Chancellor Wells and all the partners in this.
Thank you very much. I'd leave you with this thought, I guess, that as I described those strategic initiatives as branding outcomes, I mean, obviously there are clearly other objectives there, but I would also describe that work as intimately engaged in the educational infrastructure of New North. And by saying that, by implication, essentially I'm saying we're all in the economic development business. I keep kidding Chancellor Wells and Jeff Raffin, who are the technical college president for Northeast Wisconsin, that if they would just do their jobs better, all the rest of my work would be easy. And there's some truth to that. I think that education is such a prized characteristic of the state, and invoking that in an economic development arena, I think is why this is important. Because I think that if people see the value, they just have to be able to make the bridges between the day-to-day business of educating and the longer-term outcomes of actually creating an economy. And those are really critical bridge points. New Era allows us to do that pretty fluidly. But I appreciate your comment. I think that I do certainly have an advantage. I know that, and I appreciate it every day.
I want to make one final comment. It takes vision to accomplish all of this, and that vision was that of Rick Wells when he essentially had the idea for New Era. So we must recognize Rick's vision in making this all happen. So thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, I'd like to share some news with you all from around the system, and we'll start right here at UW-Oshkosh. Last month, the campus celebrated the official groundbreaking for the nation's first commercial scale dry fermentation anaerobic biodigester. In plain English, this state-of-the-art facility will turn about 8,000 tons of organic bio-waste generated each year by the campus and community sources into heat and electricity. In fact, the renewable energy facility is projected to produce 10%, up to 10% of the university's needs. And as I noted at the UW-Oshkosh Foundation's community breakfast earlier this morning, the project is a collaborative effort with the foundation, which purchased the land. Additional support comes in the form of a $233,000 grant from Wisconsin Focus on Energy and a $500,000 grant from the federal government. The project propels the university further toward its goal to become energy independent, and at the same time opens up invaluable opportunities for student-faculty research. This is all part of why UW-Oshkosh is ranked among the greenest universities in the country, according to the Princeton Review's Guide to 286 Green Colleges and Sierra Magazine's Cool Schools list. So congratulations to Chancellor Wells and the Foundation and the Oshkosh campus on that. UW Extension reports that fall course registrations for the UW online degree in sustainable management are up 66% over the fall semester of last year. Currently, there are 104 students enrolled in that program. The vast majority of those enrolled, 97%, are adult returning students for whom a traditional on-campus program would not work. 70% of registrations are from within the state, and the rest are from 10 states and from Germany and from China. The online Bachelor of Science in Sustainable Management is offered through Extension, working with 4 of our campuses, you might recall, Parkside, River Falls, Stout, and Superior. In response to a growing demand in this area, the 4 campuses also recently launched online certificates in sustainable management, and an online master's degree in areas of sustainability is under development. UW-Madison is putting a new spin on Happy News. The Center for Investigating Healthy Minds, located in the Weizmann Center, has received a $50,000 grant from the Dalai Lama's personal trust to support its research on healthy qualities of mind, like kindness and compassion. The center uses state-of-the-art neuroscientific and biological tools to probe the alterations in the brain and the body during the expression of such positive qualities. According to Richard Davidson, the center's director and a professor of psychology and psychiatry at UW-Madison, this was a completely unexpected but very welcome gift. The Dalai Lama has a long-standing interest in Davidson's work, as many of you will know, on the neuroscience of emotion, and has visited UW-Madison on several occasions. So best of luck to Chancellor Martin. She's not here, but Darrell is, and he's looking happier this morning than normal, and their colleagues on this really groundbreaking work. You must be seeing Dr. Davidson on a regular basis. Chancellor Van Galen and UW River Falls colleagues officially opened the doors of their new Hudson Center last month. The facility focuses on undergraduate courses for non-traditional and working adults seeking to complete a baccalaureate degree, as well as others who are interested in enrolling in select graduate and certificate programs. The center is located just a short distance south of Interstate 94 in the St. Croix Valley and provides a convenient location for local residents and for the approximately 80,000 citizens of both Wisconsin and Minnesota who travel that highway through Hudson every day. Educational offerings at the Hudson Center include a business administration bachelor's completion degree, an MBA program, 2 master's programs, and secondary education. Additional undergraduate courses and certification programs will be offered eventually. The center, I think, is a really fine example of how we're working to meet our More Graduates for Wisconsin goals in new ways by making higher education more accessible for those whose life obligations present them or prevent them from rolling full-time on campus. So congratulations to Chancellor Van Galen and the UW River Falls community. As you may have noticed, our campuses seem to get a lot of attention for putting up new buildings, and we've seen a couple of those on the Oshkosh campus during our visit. Well, UW-Superior, it turns out, is also getting attention for taking down an old building. When Superior dismantled its old Rothwell Student Center last summer after completion of the new Yellow Jacket Union, a great building, the goal set by the state of Wisconsin was to recycle at least 50% of the materials from the Rothwell Student Center. And some of those were things that Regent Manydeeds left behind when he was an undergraduate. He can tell you about those. A report from the demolition contractor shows that approximately 5,860 tons of materials were recycled, or 81% of the building's materials, which include concrete, brick, steel, and other metals. Tom Fennessy, who's Director of Facilities Management at Superior, reports that amounts to 320 truckloads of materials that did not go into landfills in the state. So that's good for the environment, and it's good business, says Tom. We think so, too, so kudos to Interim Chancellor Marquardt and the folks at UW-Superior. The UW-Milwaukee Research Foundation has announced $475,000 in Catalyst grants to fund 8 research projects on a range of topics, from testing new drug therapies for cancer to developing innovative materials for energy. These grants are made possible by support from the Lynd and Harry Bradley Foundation and the Richard and Ethel Hertzfeld Foundation. The Catalyst Grant Program is designed to provide seed funding for promising research projects at UWM, particularly those that have strong potential for commercialization and impact on the local economy, which is certainly in line with our research to jobs focus. Projects are selected based on their scientific excellence as judged by a panel of outside experts, as well as their commercial potential, including the potential for partnerships, intellectual property agreements, and startup companies. The Bradley Foundation's been supporting the Catalyst Grants program since 2007, and Michael Grebe, its president and CEO, and no stranger to us, former president of this board, says, quote, "We continue to be impressed by the creativity, depth, and scope of the research being done," unquote. So congratulations to Interim Chancellor Lovell and his colleagues at UW-Milwaukee. I'm also pleased to report that the UW system is expanding its prior learning assessment efforts with the support of an $800,000 4-year grant from the Lumina Foundation for Education. prior learning assessment, which is already used in different forms across the system, measures the learning a student may have attained outside the classroom through things like corporate training, work experience, military service, civic activity, independent study. By providing college credit for demonstrated learning gained in such experiences, the UW system hopes to enroll more adult students, including returning veterans and those who previously attended a UW institution but departed prior to earning a degree. The expanded initiative will also focus on the transferability of these prior learning assessment credits across campuses. At least 9 of our institutions will eventually pilot the new standards. And faculty members, very important, faculty members will lead the development of the core academic principles and guidelines underlying the PLA process to ensure that the highest academic standards are maintained. This initiative offers a significant opportunity for more Wisconsin residents to get on a pathway toward a college degree by recognizing the value of their previous learning experiences. And it also avoids the wasteful duplication of forcing students to take courses whose content that they have already mastered. Living in Wisconsin, we tend to take fresh air for granted, I suppose, very often, but when one campus announced efforts to keep the air even fresher, it generated a whole lot of publicity. When UW Stout proclaimed that as of September 1, the campus was going tobacco-free, the news spread far and wide. The smoke-free story was picked up by news outlets all across the state and also earned several positive editorials, including one by the Green Bay Press-Gazette, which called it, quote, a bold move. The UW Stout Tobacco-Free Initiative makes it the first comprehensive institution in the UW system to prohibit smoking and the use of all other tobacco products on campus. The policy includes all UW Stout property, including their parking lots and sidewalks. Chancellor Chuck Sorensen gives the students at Stout much credit for making this happen. In April 2009, Stout students overwhelmingly supported banning smoking from the campus, and then a year later they voted again to extend that ban to all tobacco products. So congratulations to Chancellor Sorensen, who's not here, but the Provost Julie Firstbo is, and we're glad you are, and congratulations to all the people on the Stout campus, especially the students who pushed that initiative. I'd like to call the board's attention to something else that's green, the green brochure in your folders. It's our new growth agenda brochure. It includes all the updated numbers and lots of information about our More Grads and Research to Jobs initiatives. So if at any time you'd like more copies of that, let us know. I find that as I go around the state and talk with people, it's very, very useful. It kind of pulls together in fairly short space in an easy way to read and look at the message of the growth agenda. And finally, a quick word about Election Day. You'll recall that our faculty colleagues from across the UW system have agreed on a common set of 5 shared learning goals, one of which is to prepare each UW graduate with a sense of, quote, individual, social, and environmental responsibility, including civic knowledge and engagement, unquote. So we want our students to be active, engaged, inquisitive citizens of a 21st century democracy, and that means simply we want them to vote on Election Day. No matter which party or what candidate they might support, we hope that they will exercise their right to vote and make their voices heard. Earlier this year, leaders from United Council of Students asked us to support their nonpartisan Students Vote 2010 campaign with a goal of increasing student registration and turnout. So I think it's a very encouraging sign when our student leaders take this kind of initiative to spread the word about civic participation and the responsibilities of citizenship in a democracy. So good for them. Election season is the fall season, so I thought I'd take this seasonal opportunity to read you a poem entitled simply Fall by Edward Hirsch. Fall, falling, fallen. That's the way the season changes its tense in the long-haired maples that dot the road. The veiny hand-shaped leaves redden on their branches in a fiery competition with the final remaining cardinals, and then begin to sidle and float through the air, at last settling into colorful layers carpeting the ground. At twilight, the light, too, is layered in the trees in a season of odd, dusky congruences and dash. A scarlet tanager and the odor of burning leaves. A golden retriever loping down the center of a wide street, and the sun setting behind smoke-filled trees in the distance. A gap opening up in the treetops, and a bruised cloud blamelessly filling the space with purples. Everything changes and moves in the split second between summer's sprawling past and winter's hard revision. One moment pulling out of the station according to schedule, another moment arriving on the next platform. It happens almost like clockwork. The leaves drift away from their branches and gather slowly at our feet, sliding over our ankles, and the season begins moving around us, even as its colorful weather moves us, even as it pulls us into its dusty twilight pockets. And every year there is a brief, startling moment when we pause in the middle of a long walk home and suddenly feel something invisible and weightless touching our shoulders, sweeping down from the air. It is the autumn wind pressing against our bodies. It is the changing light of fall falling on us. And finally, Mr. President, I was reading a review of a new biography of George Washington. And the biographer evidently talks about Washington's early on as a young man looking forward to the public person that he would become. And in preparing for that, one of the things he did was to look around for some advice on how proper people in the 18th century who want to be leaders should behave. And he found some advice in a 16th century Italian book called Rules of Civility. And he wrote this in one of his notebooks as a young man, and I thought it was very good rule of civility for Board of Regents meetings, where sometimes we do get very passionate and agitated, as indeed sometimes we should on major public issues of the day. But the advice that George Washington found useful was this: be due, that is B-E-D-E-W. Bedew no man's face with your spittle by approaching too near to him when you speak. So that, Mr. President, is my report.
Certainly words to live by, President Riley. Thank you.
Does that apply to women as well?
Yes. Not in George Washington's terms, evidently.
Thank you. We now move to the report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee, which has been moved up on the agenda in recognition of something or another. And I will turn to Regent Menendez, I believe, is doing the report today.
This is the report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee. As you know, the Capital Planning and Budget Committee met jointly with the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee to hear a presentation describing the partnership between the university and the University of Oshkosh Foundation. We also had an interesting update regarding the campus master plan. After that meeting, we then broke off for our own meeting and first approved the minutes of the August committee meeting, and then went right to the following 4 resolutions, which were unanimously approved by the Capital Planning and Budget Committee and are now presented as consent agenda items. First, Resolution 1.3.C, brought by UW-College's, they request authority to revise the UW-Sheboygan campus lease between the Board of Regents and Sheboygan County to reflect the current operating arrangement that they have, the land boundaries, and the recent co-location of the Sheboygan County Cooperative Extension within the campus buildings. Resolution 1.3.D, brought by the University of Wisconsin at Madison, requests authority to construct a $2.8 million athletic hockey swimming facility project. The project will construct a 3-level addition to the Kohl Center that will provide a permanent home for the men's and women's hockey and swimming programs. Resolution 1.3.E was brought by the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, and it requests authority to construct a $4.8 million quarter residence hall renovation project. It also seeks a waiver to allow for single-time bidding. This project is the first in a series of residence hall renovation projects at the Platteville campus that will upgrade interior surfaces and infrastructure and provide improvements to bring them up to today's standards. The waiver of the standard building process is necessary to provide a single source of project responsibility to ensure that the renovations are completed during the summer break before students return to campus. It's vital that they get it done before that time. Resolution 1.3F, the final resolution, requests authority to construct all 12 agency maintenance and repair projects at 8 UW system institutions totaling $20 million, including $12 million of program revenue. Three of the largest projects implements energy conservation opportunities in 8 buildings at the University of Wisconsin at Eau Claire, 1 building at UW-Milwaukee, and 10 buildings at UW-Platteville. The debt service for these projects will be paid from the annual energy cost savings from the fuel and utilities appropriation. As I said before, all of these resolutions were unanimously passed by the committee. Regent Davis abstained from considering item E. I now move adoption of resolutions 1E, C, D, E, and F.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a request to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to request 1.3.E be removed from the consent agenda, and I'll be recusing myself from consideration of that resolution.
Okay. So that has been removed. We now have 1.3C, D, and F. Any discussion on those 3 resolutions? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are agreed to. We now turn to Resolution 1.3E. Any discussion on that resolution? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is agreed to. Oh, just let the record show that Regent Davis has recused himself from 1.3. Correct.
The final note is that Associate Vice President Miller reported to our committee that the Building Commission approved $162 million for projects at its September meeting. The funding breakdown for those projects is $74 million general fund supported borrowing, and $21 million program revenue, and $67 million gift funds. With that end of that report, the committee went to closed session. That's my report.
Thank you, Regent. We now move to the report of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. Regent President.
Thank you. The first item we had was a report from Al Christ on an update on the UW System's response to the recommendations of the Competitive University Workforce Commission. We heard from Donna Dalvang, academic staff representative from UW Superior, and Randy Olson, a faculty representative from UW Stevens Point, which gave their perspective on the key recommendations for UW employees that they represent. I think while we considered all the recommendations to be obviously important, probably the top one we put, again, not surprising, was the competitive salaries. We next heard about the UW System Trust Funds, which actively participates in issues involving discrimination, the environment, and substantial social injury via proxy reading of shareholder proposals as addressed in the Regent policies. Analyst Tom Reinders reported that in 2010, proxy season saw the filing of 370 proposals related to social issues, nearly half of them coming to votes. We had our status, the UW System Human Resource System. Michael Morgan gave our current status of this, and he noted, I think happily, that the project overall remains on time and within budget. A few areas which are slightly behind, one example of international tax due to some complexity, but overall the project, as we said, indicates on time, within budget, and things are going well. We had a report from Claudia Sanders, who's the General Counsel for the UW Medical Foundation. She presented some background information describing an upcoming joint venture between the UW Medical Foundation, UW Hospitals and Clinic Authorities, and Meriter Hospital. This was the Fertility Care, Inc., establishing that Generations Fertility Care, Inc., a not-for-profit corporate joint venture. No action is required. This item was presented to the committee to meet a 60-day notice requirement outlined in the board's agreement with the UW-MF. We were then asked to approve a 10-year contract for financial services opportunities between UW-Oshkosh and the UW Credit Union. We heard an overview of the process that was followed and the guidelines, whether it did, and it obviously did follow the guidelines established by the Board of Regents in 2007. We asked Julie Gordon to provide an update on campuses who have had renewed financial services agreements since the board's 2007 direction. All 5 used a competitive process, made the debit card optional as opposed to mandating it, provided students information on other financial institutions in that area, and involved students whenever there's been revenue generated. Also considered the endorsement of a continued federal funding for stem cell research. Regent Walsh indicated that due to the importance of research funding, in particular stem cell funding, to the overall funding and reputation of UW-Madison, that it was important for the board to signal its concurrence with the decision to join an amicus brief recently filed in federal court. The resolution that you have this morning was slightly modified by the committee, and a copy is in your folders. We had a report that Senior Vice President Morgan, he outlined the 2011-2013 cost to continue item in the UW Systems biennial budget. He indicated that if furloughs had not been included, the amount would have been very close to the 2009-2011 level. We also talked about some of the items that our committee would be potentially looking at in the coming year. The 3 probably at the top of the list. The first that we'll hear about in December would be seg fees. We'll hear Julie Gordon will give a report to our committee in December, a review of how campuses engage and involve students in making decisions about the allocation of student segregated fees. We also talked about looking at for-profit higher education, something that's been in the news a lot. What are the risks, what are the opportunities for the UW system, colleges and universities with regard to for-profits? And finally, something again that's been, if you read a lot of the publications we get on roles and obligations of trustees, what is our role, oversight role, when it becomes with regard to athletics, with regard to UW system universities' athletic programs. So those are 3 of the things I think we're going to be looking at in the coming months. On behalf of Business, Finance, and Audit, I now move adoption of Resolution 12D3, which is the UW-Oshkosh contract for financial services opportunities with UW Credit Union, and revised resolution in your packets 12D4, endorsement of continued federal funding for stem cell research.
Second. If those have been moved and seconded, is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? If not, is there discussion in either of the items on the consent agenda?
Chuck, I'm on the phone.
Yes, David, do you have anything?
No, I do not.
Okay. If not, then I think we are prepared to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those resolutions are agreed to.
That would conclude my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Regent Smith.
Chuck, can I ask a question?
Yes, Regent Davis.
Regent Smith, excuse me.
Brent would be fine.
Okay. Sorry. Those are really great topics that you've chosen to talk about, and I'm just wondering, do you anticipate that, if there's any kind of like a report that can educate us on those 3 topics that are not on your Business and Finance Committee, that we would, are you anticipating something in writing that we can kind of learn about all of those topics? Because they're really, really interesting topics, and some of us would be interested, I'm sure.
Right, and I think one of the things we've talked about, Michael, Morgan, and I, is to some of these topics, if they start in our committee, or should they be a full board discussions. But if they're not full board, we'll certainly have something in writing. I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, I'm real interested. Good topics. Thanks.
I think the goal, Regent Davis, and certainly we're going to hear from the Education Committee as well, and I know, is for the committees to be the sort of the incubators of ideas, but that they do, as these ideas are discussed in committee and have a lot of energy behind it. I sense, and I think the board might be very interested in not only a couple of those topics, but I assume a couple of topics that the Education Committee may be dealing with.
Do you think
in
so?
which case I will now turn it to Regent Crane for a report on the Education Committee.
Well, actually, the first item that I'm going to discuss relates to the priorities for our committee for the rest of this year. We've taken seriously the challenge from the board leadership that we focus. And I think that you'll find that what we're suggesting is as challenging and provocative as has just come from business and finance, and that in our case that many of the items that we'll be talking about are interrelated, and so part of our challenge will be focusing on just exactly how to handle those. We also we're greatly helped in our conversation by the presence of the provosts who both before the meeting and during the discussion helped us a great deal, and we appreciate that very much. The topics that we are suggesting for our priorities represent components of the committee's core goals that we had discussed previously, and that core goal is more graduates. And priorities fall within the broad and interconnected areas of access, PK-16 collaborations, retention, and student success. There was a great deal of interest in our committee, particularly in pursuing urban education and our responsibilities there, and teacher education, and of course those are interrelated, obviously. We also point out to you that our November meeting, our deep dive policy discussion, will focus on the Common Core standards for K-12, and I think all of that's going to be very useful to our future discussions. And the committee yesterday agreed to propose to the leadership of the Board of Regents that the topic of urban education be one of the policy discussions for the one-day March meeting. And of course, you'll have other thoughts about that perhaps, but that is our suggestion. Our intention is to pursue urban education broadly construed, including urban environments throughout the state, Milwaukee obviously, but also many other communities. And that those discussions would include one or more aspects of teacher preparation for teaching in urban schools. Our intention is also that the array of challenges and opportunities we have as a state around the broad topic of PK-16 needs to be a priority not only for the Education Committee but for the board. Other topics that we have identified are pre-college and bridge programs, student success programs for populations of opportunity through high-impact practices, enhancing dual enrollment opportunities for high school students across Wisconsin. Superintendent Evers was very passionate about that. Focusing on the unprecedented opportunity of the UW system and the DPI to follow closely the recreation of the UW Parkside School of Education, and obviously that is of particular interest as we talk about teacher education. And finally, and certainly primarily, the closing of the achievement gap, which we believe runs through all of these topics.
Hold it.
There's a mysterious voice. Is that you, David? Anyway, going on, you will be hearing about those topics obviously in the months ahead. We did have a very good discussion about replication of successful charter schools at UW-Milwaukee. This topic has been before us before. In February, the committee discussed this issue. At that time, the committee expressed its support for moving forward with the development of a policy that would permit and guide the replication of successful UW-Milwaukee authorized charter schools. And following that meeting, staff from Senior Vice President Martin's office worked with Regent Evers and members of his staff, with Dr. Robert Kapman from the UW-Milwaukee Office of Charter Schools and our Office of General Counsel to put a policy in place. And yesterday the committee unanimously endorsed the replication policy, and I will be offering Resolution 111C at the end of my report as part of the consent agenda. It's important to note that the policy is framed in accordance with the recommendations and best practices for charter schools established by the National Association of Charter School Authorized, and that was advocated by both Regent Evers and Dr. Tatman. And it's also important to note that only those schools with demonstrated academic and organizational success will be brought before us for replication, and that they will be considered only on a case-by-case basis. We then had reports of 2 campus academic plans, one from, we heard from Provost Julia Wallace of UW Green Bay, and with the new leadership in place on that campus, they are now focusing on the fulfillment of UW Green Bay's interdisciplinary mission through continuity, collaboration, and connection. It really was a very good presentation. We also heard yesterday from UW-Oshkosh Provost Lane Ernst, and he described components of the institution-wide strategic planning undertaken by the university in the last few years and grounded in its liberal education reform efforts and a more intentional integration of inclusive excellence. This was also exciting work and was complementary to our presentation that we heard from Chancellor Wells in the morning. The committee received a presentation on equity-mindedness from Vicki Washington, Associate Vice President for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. This, too, was very thought-provoking. Her emphasis was that equity-mindedness is a critical component of inclusive excellence. Equity refers, and this is the important statement, I think, equity refers to not just equal access, but also equal outcomes among all racial, ethnic, and other student groups in higher education institutions. One of the underlying principles of the Access to Success work, about which we heard yesterday, has that as basic. Inclusive excellence asks us to reframe the discussion of unequal outcomes from an emphasis on student deficits or deficiencies to a matter of institutional responsibility. Equity-mindedness, therefore, requires institutions to hold themselves accountable for unequal outcomes. And it was emphasized yesterday that all of us in the room, and that included the Board of Regents, are higher education practitioners, and that therefore we are part of that responsibility. We agreed that it was hard work, and as Vicki Washington said, American culture is so steeped in deficit-mindedness, and it's not easy to break out of that cycle to this better look at the issues. We had a report from the Senior Vice President, Martin. She included a feature of, included in her report, where included a feature of some of the inclusive excellence work being done at UW-Oshkosh, and that is very exciting work. It's of a very comprehensive nature, and is evident of the commitment of UW-Oshkosh's impressive efforts to incorporate inclusive excellence into the fabric of that university, And as one of the presenters said, no more business as usual. So I now present our consent agenda items. It includes the minutes from our August 19th, 2010 meeting. It includes Resolution 11A2, which approves 1 new appointment and 3 reappointments to the UW School of Medicine and Public Health Oversight and Advisory Committee of the Wisconsin Partnership Program. Resolution 11A3 that approved the revised mission at UW-Oshkosh. We had heard that presented previously, and there has been a hearing on that since. And Resolution 11C endorsing the principle of replication for University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee charter schools under the board's authority that have demonstrated academic and organizational success on a case-by-case basis, and as amendments to existing charter school contracts come before us. I submit those now.
Second.
Is there a second? There is a second. Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? Any discussion on any item on the consent agenda, or any other aspect of Regent Crane and her committee's great work and efforts. If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. Regent Crane, is that?
That's it.
That's it? Okay, thank you. Regent Walsh, hang in there for 1 second here, because we now move to the election of a new Assistant Trust Officer of the Board of Regents.
I'm excited.
I know, well, there's a job for you, just stay put. Pat Brady's retirement creates a vacancy in the Assistant Trust Officer position, and in light of Tom Stafford's new appointment as General Counsel, I'm wondering if Regent Walsh would have a nomination for the Assistant Trust Officer. Regent Walsh?
I have no idea who I'm supposed to nominate.
Okay. I gave you a little hint when I said in light of Tom Stafford's new appointment, General Counsel.
I nominated Tom Stafford.
Is there a second?
I was worried you wanted me to do it.
Because you were on the search committee.
Yes, and he's a wonderful, wonderful nominee.
There you go.
Do you need a speech?
It's looking good so far, Tom. Hang in there. Are there any other nominations for the office of Assistant Trust Officer? You're sure? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Congratulations. And thank you, Regent Walsh.
You're welcome.
We now move to a resolution of appreciation to UW-Oshkosh. I will call on Regent Evers. Yeah, we can do it up here.
I get a big podium and I don't give it up, so. First of all, I just have to tell you, I was a resident of the Oshkosh area for 10 years. My family enjoyed living here and enjoyed the interaction we had with the UW-Oshkosh community when we were here. And also, I was here as a regional education administrator. I can tell you that the work of collaboration was evident even back then. So it's my pleasure to offer this resolution. Whereas UW-Oshkosh is an agile, responsive, innovative university aligned with the needs of northeastern Wisconsin and beyond, and whereas UW-Oshkosh, the second fastest growing university in the state, has experienced historic enrollment growth in 4 consecutive years of record-breaking graduating classes, and whereas UW-Oshkosh is dedicated to granting an additional 8,000 degrees by the year 2025, building upon a 25% growth rate in degrees conferred over the last 10 years. And whereas UW-Oshkosh has gained national recognition for groundbreaking innovations, including the graduation project, student-heightened employment program, and accelerated online Bachelor of Science degree in nursing, as well as its sustainability efforts, such as becoming the first fair trade university in the United States and utilizing state-of-the-art renewable education features throughout the campus. And whereas the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh has been recognized as a national model for developing and highlighting exemplary campus-wide liberal education and inclusivity programs. I almost didn't get that out. And whereas UW-Oshkosh has nearly tripled the total assets of the UW-Oshkosh Foundation, characterized by raising more than $35 million for high-priority projects, student scholarships, and academic programs. And whereas UW-Oshkosh will have completed by 2011 a decades-long $200 million transformation of campus facilities. Whereas UW-Oshkosh has established a national reputation for the way it engages and partners with numerous individuals and organizations to better serve the region, including being proud founding members of New Era and the New North Incorporated. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System thanks UW-Oshkosh for hosting the board's October 2010 meeting and commends Chancellor Richard Wells and the campus's faculty, staff, and students for success engaging people and ideas while building a regional model for collaboration and action. Thank you very much.
I got to have a quick last word. Just my nature, I'm sorry. No, but I really do want to reinforce, as all my colleagues do, the time and effort you all take as members of the Board of Regents to come throughout the state to the Greater Wisconsin University. So we really, really appreciate that. It is a lot of work, but it's work that we enjoy doing because it helps us exemplify the brilliance and excellence of our faculty, staff, and students on the campuses, and it helps ground you more in all the wonderfulness, so to speak, throughout the state of Wisconsin. So we really appreciate you coming. And I really appreciate the faculty, staff, and students here that worked very hard to be very well organized, to make sure the meeting went off well, and we did a good job, refining what we could tell you about. We could keep you here for a year, the kinds of things that you saw, but we know that wouldn't be fair. But I also want to take this opportunity to thank the system staff, because it's hard to take the show on the road. And I know that a lot of our people help here, but they have to work even harder when they bring the show on the road, and we really appreciate that. And this is where I always tell people, particularly new chancellors and systems of campuses, this is where it's wonderful to be a chancellor in the system when you have system staff that take such wonderful care of the Board of Regents, so we don't have to do that much with them, So, and we really appreciate that staff. So thank you for all the staff at System and UW-Oshkosh for organizing an outstanding meeting. I hope you come back and visit us real soon, like in 3 years.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you to you and all your staff for all your kindness here. And I also wanted to especially thank you for these chairs. These chairs are the single most comfortable chairs that we have had in my entire time on the board. Don't you agree? And I just would encourage you not to be concerned when you see a couple of UWO gold-clad staffers who are out loading about 4 of these into this car with an Obama sticker in lot 15. Don't bother. It really just. Any other communications, petitions, memorials? Any unfinished or additional business to come before the board? It's 10:45.
Good.
If not, we will take a 10-minute recess, and the board will then reconvene in open session to consider a resolution to recess into closed session.